Hello, class. I am back once again on chapter 2, objective number 3, and we're going to talk about how theories and hypotheses lead to scientific progress. So let's just go with a simple model of scientific progress. We propose a theory. We get some hypotheses coming from them. Hypotheses get tested using studies, all the things we're going to talk about in this class. If the hypothesis gets supported, the theory receives some confirmation. We don't say that anything is proven because there may be other replications that don't support the theory. But if the hypothesis is supported, we make the theory stronger. If the hypotheses are not supported, we just alter the theory or we discard the theory. So in this sense, science is kind of self-correcting because you're constantly testing these theories. All right, well, objective number 4, I want to get into the parts of a research article. And so a research article is a very, very standard. And even in different fields, it's mostly always the same scientific article. It's always got the same parts. And so here's the anatomy of the research article. We start with an abstract. The abstract is a paragraph summary, and it'll tell you the introduction, the methods, the results, the discussion. It'll tell you the whole thing, but it tends to be pretty heavy on results because a lot of times we use abstracts to try to figure out what did the study find, did it support any theories and stuff like that. So we're looking to the abstract for that short summary. The introduction is a little broader and it introduces the problem. It talks about the past research on the problem and it will give you the hypotheses. Those will always be contained in the introduction. Next comes the method, and that's going to describe the participants, the procedures, what they did, all the measures, but it's basically what they did in the study. And they'll give you that in enough detail in a research article that you can replicate it, because again, replication is very important. Finally, they'll give you the results that'll answer each of one of the hypotheses, and they'll do it in a narrative form. They'll tell you the results in a kind of story form, but they'll also do it in a statistical form. So that's where you're going to see the statistics. And then finally, we get the discussion, and that's going to summarize the findings, and it's going to comment on the results, and it's going to then also give you some limitations, some reasons to be cautious, and a lot of times suggestions for future research. Okay, finally, objective 5, we're going to get into some of the ethics of practices for animal and human research. So there are ethics codes, what we call ethics codes, and that's where different scientific societies, like, for example, the American Psychological Association and government agencies have produced basically some rule books. And every institution in which research is performed will have what's called an IRB, or an institutional review board. So Lincoln University has one of those. So ethics codes are going to basically cover 3 areas. One is called beneficence, and that is a cost-benefit analysis. The benefits have to be greater than the costs in research. So we've got to make sure that our benefits are exceeding the costs, and we want to maximize the benefits of research while minimizing the cost, because we have to be very careful about how we're treating people and treating animals in research. Number 2 is respect for persons, and that is done usually with human subject research as informed consent. And that's this idea that participants need to know enough about what they're going to be involved in to make good decisions about whether they want to participate. You cannot coerce participants to be part of a study. You can't say, hey, here's this $100. You want it? You want it? Here, come be part of my study. No, you can't do that. Deception or withholding of information has to be very, very carefully considered. So if you're not telling them the truth, that is a big issue. If you're withholding information from them, that is a big issue in the ethics of research. Finally, justice. Selection of participants must be scientifically justifiable, meaning you can't just choose any participants. You can't go out and say, oh, well, I'm going to do this study on memory, but I'm going to go ahead and get these homeless people because it's easy to find them. No. Unless it's a study on homeless people, you ain't choosing no homeless people, okay? And so if you're in the lab, you're going to watch a video about the Tuskegee syphilis study, and many of you already know about it. That was an issue of justice. Okay. We a lot of times use a form for informed consent, and that's where we show people or tell people what they will be involved in. And when there's cost to the research, if it's going to be problematic for people, or if there are any risks, they need to know exactly what they're going to be involved in. And we always use one of these forms. So on the form, it will tell you the purpose and duration of the study, the risks and the benefits that you can incur by participating in the study. It will ensure your confidentiality, meaning that your data won't get out anywhere. Other than to be used as an aggregated data set in the study. A lot of studies are anonymous, so they don't even have your name involved. It will tell you that you have the right to refuse or stop participation in the study at any time. And then it will give contact information for the researcher and for the IRB committee of the institution. So that's the basic elements of your informed consent form. Now, like I said, some studies will withhold information about the purpose of the study. And now, why do they do that? They do it because giving away information about the purpose of the study sometimes changes behavior. So let's say you want to do a study on discrimination or something like that, on racial discrimination. If you tell people that's what the study is about, yeah, that's going to change their behavior because they don't want to be perceived as racist. So a lot of times you won't tell them that, or you will in fact tell them that the purpose is something else. When you tell them that the purpose is something else, we call that deception. Deception is when they lie about the purpose. So for example, some of you may remember Milgram's study where they gave the shocks and stuff like that, or they didn't really give shocks, but they said they were giving shocks. And they told them that it was a study about learning, but actually it was a study about obedience. It is basically unethical. No IRB is going to approve you to deceive people about pain that they will incur. But sometimes it's okay to deceive people, but you got to be real careful about it. And it's very controversial when it comes to your ethics committee. Debriefing. If there is any deception involved, if you have lied about anything, you have to provide the subjects or the participants with an explanation as soon as possible. And that means right after your data collection. Okay, let's take a brief look at animal research. Most animals in psychological research are not harmed or killed just by the nature of the studies. Medical studies are very different. The IRBs and the ethical codes will regulate treatment, and that's going to include minimizing pain and suffering among the animals. Now, I came from an area of animal research, and I can tell you that there is pain and suffering. So there is pain and suffering of being held in a cage. There is pain and suffering being subjected to all kinds of different kinds of stimuli. So even in psychological experiments, we do have problems with animal ethics, and we do need to be very careful to minimize pain and maximize the benefits of the studies. Okay, finally, I want to talk about one other ethical issue, which is communicating with the public. Fraud is faking data. Data must be available to other scientists. Plagiarism. Using someone else's work without credit, these are seen as extremely bad in science, extremely bad. And because of that, you'll see plagiarism, for example, in almost every class, you're going to receive an F if you're caught plagiarizing, taking someone else's words without giving them credit. So, and that's true, of course, in this class as well. So in the end of this, you're going to see a bunch of ethical dilemmas if you go to the PowerPoints online. And you can go through those ethical dilemmas one by one. For example, this one where you read it and then you interpret whether there's an ethical problem. I do encourage you to do these little thought experiments because they will help you understand the information much, much better. You guys have a great day.